Okay, guys, if I look a little bit serious, it's because I'm feeling a little bit serious. On this episode of A Few Rotten Reviews, I'm going to read a few rotten reviews and review them and comment on them plenty concerning the film Avatar. That's right, James Cameron's Avatar. I've had about enough of it. Plenty of other people have had about enough of it. And I bring this up because I hear talk that there are going to be 4 or 5 more Avatar sequels. And I fell asleep watching the first one. Here we have Avatar the tomato meter at 82%. And we have Avatar the audience score at 82%. Well, it's nice that critics and audience members can agree on something. Unfortunately, I don't agree with any of it whatsoever. I think Avatar is completely overrated. Avatar was a big budget cartoon, a fancy cartoon. I remember when it came out at the time that everybody around me at work, everybody in my family, everybody I met just at the 7-Eleven when I bought a Big Gulp was trying to tell me how great this film was and that I just needed to rush out and see it, and especially rush out and see it in all marvelous 3D. I was just busy at the time. At that time, I had a lot of other things going on, so I didn't have time to go see it. And I am not disappointed that I didn't see it. I'd say 4 years later, just flipping through channels on Dish Network, I ran across Avatar, so I started it up. And I can honestly say that less than 40 minutes into it, I fell asleep. That's not common for me. It never was common for me, even on a bad movie, to fall asleep. So I can say that it was truly boring, and it remains truly boring. And aside from the special effects, I don't see why such an over-cliched, overdone type of children's story is at all popular. Now, I guess I'm starting to feel like those people that just didn't get Avengers Infinity War, or maybe one of the directors like Martin Scorsese, or other directors that have chimed in that agree with him and call Marvel films despicable. Well, I feel along those lines that the whole Avatar experience is despicable. I say despicable because it is literally a theme park ride disguised as a movie, and it is a theme park ride at Disney. So I'm going to get into this, and I'm going to have no mercy. And when I see reviews that start off with 5 stars and they want to tell me how impressive the CGI is, I'm going to discount those. I'm going to bag on plenty of those if they have more to say after that. But if it's all about the CGI, I'm just all about ignoring it. I'm going to deem it as irrelevant, because what I want to look at is what makes the story so interesting. Why is this anything other than a long, expensive cartoon? Because I don't think it is. So let's get into it. Rotten reviews. 1 star right off the bat. Avatar is such an overrated film. It's ugly and poorly acted, but the special effects are great. Again, special effects irrelevant. Overrated, I agree 100%. In my opinion, I would give this a 2.5 to 3 stars. That's it. I might stick with that 2.5, below average, because I feel that this type of story has been done so many times just in my lifetime that it's pathetic. It's really pathetic. It's careless. It's lazy. It's something I wouldn't expect from somebody like James Cameron. Now, the story is that he was developing this in his head since he was 12. I believe it 100% because this is something I would find impressive as a 12-year-old. This is not as impressive as an adult. I would be embarrassed to bring this as a script in any kind of movie as an adult because it would only be suitable for children. Yet you have adults praising this. I completely disagree, and I find it laughable, except it's not even funny. It's more like offensive that there are going to be sequels, because I can't imagine how contrived and worthless the plots of those sequels will be. I can imagine that, well, the hero will just do what he did in the first one, and he'll body swap back with humans and blow up some evil corporate base and return balance to the giant tree. You know, that's probably what it's going to be, and I can't imagine what it'll be by the 5th sequel. It's completely ridiculous. Let's move on. 4.5 stars. A spectacular film from a visionary director. Well, I'm discounting it because you didn't tell me why it's so spectacular. 4 stars. A film with great special effects, made very well, acted great, although the plot knows old because it looks like the classic plot of Western movies with Indians and cowboys, but with much more advanced technology. I agree with the gist of that, except for the rating. It reminds me of Pocahontas, and I know that's an overused comparison, but it reminds me of about 40 other films that tried to rip off Pocahontas as well, with varying degrees of success. And I don't even have words for how ridiculous this is. 4 stars. Maybe the story archetype is too used, you think? But certainly gives a new vibe. The effects and world design building is great. Definitely need to be watched in a big screen to get the full experience. Well, I can say I watched it on a pretty big screen at home, but if I had been watching it on a gigantic IMAX screen, which is what everybody in the world recommended that I should do back in the day, I would have just fallen asleep in a much more crowded place, because there was no story there to keep me awake. 5 stars. In 3D, the film is a must-watch. Irrelevant. 5 stars. Greatest movie of all time, in my opinion. Irrelevant because no details. 1 star. Poor direction, acting, script, and everything. I agree, maybe 1 star, 2 stars. I disagree on everything being poor. The CGI was great, as everybody is going to tell us. Acting, passable. Script, completely cliched. So on the nose, so cliched and overused that I literally, in 10 minutes into this film, no exaggeration, I had already guessed exactly where it was going to go, exactly how it was going to end, and there was nothing to be gained from this other than seeing how expensive a cartoon is. Literally 10 minutes in, I knew exactly how it would end. So I can only imagine episode 2, 3, 4, and 5. I can only imagine. 5 stars. Greatest movie of all time. Irrelevant. 2.5 stars. For a film that made so much money, it is the highest grossing film of all time. This is a movie that has left very little lasting cultural impact, as 10 years later it is largely seen as a punchline. Now, this review is from July 17th of 2019, and I'm hoping to find more of these, because we've had 10 years for people to come to their senses and maybe tell James Cameron to come to his senses and forget making sequels for this turkey. Okay, I'm going to continue. Part of that film is that the film isn't particularly good beyond its groundbreaking special effects, as it recycles plot elements from many other interesting films and throws them together in an attempt to make a statement on environmentalism that ultimately feels ham-fisted and preachy. This is not the best film of 2009. Well, I second that. He gives it 2.5 stars here. I agree on that. This is a good one. Somebody came to their senses. 4 stars. If there is anything that I know, it is James Cameron plus Sigourney Weaver equals great filmmaking. I would say no, because this is not Aliens, and if it were Aliens, I would have nothing but praise for it. I certainly am not planning on doing a rotten review on Aliens, because that would be a tough one for me to swallow. This is not tough. This is like shooting fish in a barrel. It's just everybody looking at me shooting those fish in the barrel needs to wake the hell up, come back to reality. 0.5 star. Boring, overplayed plot, aged poorly, was only rated so high based on hype of the era, deserve such a high score. Yeah, hype is right. Like I said, everybody I knew, even people I didn't know where I worked, were telling me how awesome and spectacular it was that they had seen this thing on opening night, and I just said, okay, and as I've mentioned before, unconsciously, my unconscious feelings just happened to save me. I had no urge to go out and see this, and I was proven right. 2.5 stars. I don't know how it became the highest grossing film of all time. It was an okay movie. Again, I think it was okay. It was passable. I think the reason I fell asleep in particular were because There were some scenes, I guess it would be towards the final act, where you had this pivotal battle or pivotal attack scene coming up, and it had a long, drawn out, slow scenes of CGI bombers going to drop their bombs, and it had to be shown forever as they approached their targets. And I suppose this was meant to build up some form of tension, but I found it attentionless, and I found it just an exercise in what kind of CGI and shading on the CGI that Cameron could demonstrate he was good at doing. Um, I fell asleep. Okay, I'm iffy on okay because normally in okay movie I don't fall asleep. I mean, it's not like I have narcolepsy, but in this movie I felt like it was like a sleeping aid to me. 5 stars. The first 3D masterpiece, a pioneer in futuristic cinema. Okay, a pioneer in futuristic CGI. But as it ages, it continues like a lot of CGI. It's groundbreaking in 1 year. A decade or two later, it just looks like a smoothed out cartoon. And I think it is going that way. 5 stars, the best movie I've ever seen. Now this is, again, this is from June of 2019. If this is the best movie you've ever seen, you're either 6 years old or your standards are, wow, they're just all about CGI. I mean, why not just rate Disney's original Pocahontas cartoon 5 stars? Maybe you do. That's not enough for me. I need an actual story. I need tension. 5 stars, the best movie of the world. You can't miss it. It is a must-watch movie. The VFX is awesome, and background music's great. If you have not watched Avatar, then watch it. Well, I don't think so on the music. I found the music was just as boring as the rest of it. Nothing to it stands out to me. Plenty of other movies, the music stands out to me, even if I can't put my finger on what the name of the piece is. On this one, I fell asleep to that music, so yeah, maybe I would want that music on my headphones as I drift off. 4.5 stars. I watched Avatar for the first time when it released in cinemas in 2009, and yesterday I watched it again. Actually, I found a lot of difference. At first time, I just found it as normal movie, TV movie with some visual effects, but now when I watched it again, I found it purely a masterpiece. I saw some negative reviews, and most of them wrote some same cliche. Really, guys? What do you want more than that? Every part in the movie is perfect, starting from plot to visual effects until the performance. Oh, until the performance? Okay, it was perfect until the performance. I kind of agree with you on that. It was perfect as soon as I realized after 10 minutes that I was going to see the same boring plot I'd seen regurgitated in hundreds and hundreds of other movies. Okay, again, we have him saying in this review, I saw some negative reviews and most of them wrote same cliche. Really, guys? He says. Well, yeah, really. If every movie had this plot, you know, why have a movie? This is ridiculous. Of course cliches are a problem. It's not just a cliche. The entire plot is a retread that's been done so many times. I could probably compile a list. I'm not going to. It's painful. No, come on, guys. This is not worth all these stars. 1.5 stars. I appreciate the effects, but I didn't care for it. Again, I appreciate the effects, but they look dated to me at this time. So, yes, in 2009, I might have appreciated the effects, but 2019, even before 2019, they're starting to age a little. Now, I'm not saying they're aging as much as the Phantom Menace effects aged, not as rapidly at least, but they're aging pretty fast. 1/2 star, visually epic, but overrated as a film. I agree. 100%. I wouldn't give this 1/2 star. It deserves 2 stars, maybe 2.5. 1/2 star. This, I mean, 1/2 star would be even if the effects had been bad when it was released, and they weren't. 5 stars. A first of its kind. Avatar changes the game and innovates the film industry. A must if you're into movies. I disagree. It's not the first of its kind in any way. It changes the game and innovates the film industry. No. I mean, yes, director Cameron was using techniques that he had developed in the CGI of this film, But other than that, there was nothing groundbreaking here. Certainly these things, even a lot of what he was doing in 2009 has been further surpassed in all kinds of ways by different technologies. So it innovates the film industry. No, it innovated being able to convince people that something they've seen 1,000 times before was somehow spectacular. I'm almost wondering, as I did after its release, if perhaps given the buzz that there wasn't some kind of psychedelic substance released into the air vents, if that was the innovation. I mean, was something installed in the movie theaters that released like small amounts of psychedelics so that this thing actually was the greatest second coming to you? No, it just boggles my mind. There's nothing groundbreaking about this. 3.5 stars. I think the more important thing is the good message about not messing with nature over the CGI. Honestly, the CGI was good for 2009, but it's now just an average CGI job. Agreed, average and going down as we get further from the release date. But it was most definitely overhyped and didn't earn the $3 billion it earned. I'm not sure it was $3 billion, but irregardless, even $1 billion's too high for this thing for me. I mean, I've already bagged on The Last Jedi, for example. I don't believe that it deserves $1 billion. I'm surprised that it did. It did that on Star Wars name alone. I don't feel that this deserves even that. There's nothing groundbreaking about this except getting people to believe in the hype. 3 stars. Technically highly impressive, average storytelling. I would say it's below average storytelling. I'm not referring to the script and the dialogue in particular. I think that's okay. I'm talking about the actual plot points, what happens, and what it means to the characters. This is not average storytelling. This is like a 12-year-old rehashing stuff he's read in kids' books, only he's putting a little more of an adult language flavor on it. This is below average storytelling. 0.5 star, all caps, must be serious. Its worst movie of all time, waste movie. The only reason this movie grosses highest, the reason is audience went to see 3D only. 3D, its blue monkey movie, is one of the boring movies of history of the earth. VFX and 3D is great. While I think there's a lot of effort into this posting, but obviously English isn't the first language, but I still agree 100%. I think people were so enamored by the 3D and seeing literally blue monkey people swing from vines and dive off cliffs that yes, in a hallucinogenic way, it just captured them. But the movie is 0.5 star, I don't agree. 2 stars, fair. 2.5 stars. The movie is a beautiful visual masterpiece, but the story, which was an unapologetic ripoff of Dances with Wolves, Atlantis, Last Samurai, and even Fern Gully, was so past its sell date that it almost fermented. The love story was so predictable that it was painful. And what really makes this movie even more irritating is that it killed in the box office. Agree. That's what irritates me. That's what motivates me to make this video. Not only did it kill in the box office, and not only was it #1, and perhaps even is still technically #1 in gross revenue and in profit when you factor in inflation, but to this day there are still plans to make 4 sequels. Even 1 sequel is too much. And every time I hear somebody talk about, oh, how they went to the, Star Wars land at Disney World and they didn't like it, but then they went to the Avatar section of the Disney World and they were blown away just like the other 12 times they've been there. Excuse me, but 1 time is too much. Sorry, 1 time is too much. There's nothing to see there. 2.5 stars. Avatar's an okay film. I guess it's not great. Special effects are pretty good for the time. Agreed. Special effects were fantastic for the time, but they're aging by the day. So in another 10 years, what are we left with? We're left with people looking at this thing and going, what was I thinking? It's cringeworthy. It's not there yet. It will be there. 4.5 stars. It may not bring anything new to the genre, but the best visual effects of its decade and magnificent acting performances are worth all the praise Avatar has received. Wrong and wrong. There were no magnificent acting performances. CGI doesn't act. CGI is sculpted, sometimes hand sculpted on a computer. It is not acting. The best visual effects of its decade, that would be 2000 to 2009 or 2010, depending on how you count it. I would say questionable, because first you would have to account for the fact that it was in 3D, strip away the 3D, just compare this versus any other cartoon. It's a matter of debate whether it's so fantastic. Now I realize there are live action parts of this. There are parts that are all live action that don't have CGI. There are some. That I don't know, you could use that to say you can't judge this as a cartoon, but it is basically a cartoon with scenes of live action put into it. I don't know, that's completely subjective. I say some people would say the CGI was the fantastic CGI of the decade. I would say go back and put this as it was the best cartoon. It was the best cartoon of the decade. It was the best cartoon animation of the decade. Now I might tend to agree with that. 3.5 stars. Avatar movie is beyond belief. Great direction, beautiful story, visual effects are out of this world, but still something is missing. Major drawback, length of the movie, 157 minutes. I don't think it's the length of the movie. I think it's that a lot of the length of the movie was spent just showing off the CGI. Now, if that length of the movie had been used to do better character arcs, to get the tension up, then guess what? I would agree. But in this case, it's just a CGI fest, a show-off. I mean, wow, look how pretty my cartoon is. Look how I can spend 30 minutes showing you how pretty it is. Pathetic. Pathetic. 5 stars. This movie was ahead of its time when released. No, I wouldn't say so. I would say that it just blew a wad on CGI. That's ahead of its time. I mean, Lucas tried the same thing with the prequel Star Wars trilogy. It was also ahead of its time, and it's cringeworthy. And this will approach cringeworthy, guaranteed. 1 star. This is the most predictable movie I have ever seen. Pause it at any point and speculate on what would probably happen in a completely generic movie, and you will guess it right. So lame. Again, I agree. 10 minutes into this, I had everything figured out, and I wasn't trying. I just had it just popped into my head. That's how badly overused this plot is. 0.5 star. Overhyped movie that only made the money it did due to novelty factor. Tired story that has been done many times before. Once you get over the 3D, you realize it's nothing special. Again, I agree 100%. Now, this is key. That only made the money it did due to the novelty factor, and that, I think, is the word I was looking for. Novelty. The novelty is what this is about. It's a piece of novelty. It's a piece of novelty. It's like, hey, you know, the circus is in town. There's the carnival tent over there with the circus freaks in it, and people are going to line up for that first, especially the kids, because it promises novelty. But is it quality? 5 stars. This movie is so beautiful, and I loved it. Totally the best special effect movie. Okay, that's arguable. I think it'll be the best cringeworthy special effects movie in another decade. 5 stars. Breathtaking 3D experience, and really including visual effects. Really, you don't say. 1.5 stars. Honestly, the only reason this movie reached the heights that it did was because it was a novelty. Again, novelty, I applaud the use of the word. The first big, colorful, modern 3D movie, I would say no. There were plenty of other modern, colorful 3D movies. This one just got the novelty and the hype. The story wasn't all that original, and it relied primarily on its special effects to carry it. Oh, it was all special effects. Without special effects, this movie wouldn't have gotten off the ground. This was just, look at me, I can create a fantastic cartoon. This is all this was. It really gets me worked up because all the hype that still exists over this movie, to say that it needs sequels, I mean, to me, that's as offensive as what Disney has done with Star Wars. And I understand why the longtime Star Wars fans are so angry at what Disney has done with the sequel trilogy, and I'm almost feeling that level of hatred and disgust by just the thought that there's going to be another Avatar movie. Okay, yeah, I might be crazy, but I'm here to tell you about it. 5 stars, one of my all-time favorites. Words can't describe how visually amazing this movie is. It's also very entertaining and funny as well. I disagree with all of that. Words can describe it. It's a novelty cartoon. I just described it. 2 stars, making us humans, looking like the bad guys, and a difficult romance situation. James Cameron's Avatar will be disliked after the first time you see it. I agree. I disliked it and I hadn't seen it all. I'd only seen half of it because I had fallen asleep in the middle of it. 2.5 stars. James Cameron relies too much on VFX and technology to the point where they mar a potentially absorbing universal story on nature and humanity. I disagree, because if James Cameron hadn't made this a CGI fest, there would have been no novelty, and this thing wouldn't have opened in a dozen theaters because nobody would have been interested. 3 stars. Insane VFX, but I was kind of on the story and acting. The movie probably won't age well. Bingo, it won't age well. 0.5 star. I found the characters and dialogue so shallow and annoying that I was actively rooting for the antagonist. You know what? I agree with that. I was rooting for the antagonist as well. But, you know, there's some of us out there like that. The most intriguing and delightful character was Colonel Quaritch. And yes, the Colonel, that's exactly what I was thinking. I was actually rooting that he would like rise up from the dead, so to speak, at the end, kind of like the bad guy in the first Die Hard movie, and instead of being shot down, he would just take everybody out, including the main character and his blue girlfriend. That would have been fantastic. 2 stars. It was better when it was called Dances with Wolves. I agree. Dances with Wolves is one that people really compare to this, along with Pocahontas, along with Fern Gully. And Dances with Wolves, I saw it for the first time, not being a Western fan, and I thought it was fantastic. I've seen it 2 or 3 times, and it is fantastic. But this is not. 1/2 star, anti-human environmentalist garbage. Yeah, you could say that. It might rub people the wrong way as preaching to them on environmental issues, but I didn't see it preaching on environmental issues the way I saw it preaching on, say, modern corporate greed, which I saw a lot more of that, you know, and I thought it was silly and overdone. You had a scene in which the main characters attending like, what would you call it, an introductory training class or a briefing on what to expect on this planet, and they immediately refer to this mineral that the corporation wants to mine from this planet as unobtainium. Well, as soon as they called it that, that was cringeworthy to me, because, and how that flew over the heads of everybody else, I don't know, but it's almost making fun of itself, calling the mineral that, and it's completely unoriginal and pathetic, especially coming from somebody like James Cameron. It's stuff like that that was the non-CGI element that really turned me off and took me out of it. Cringeworthy. 2 stars. While it does feature some really cool action sequences in its inflated length and Fern Gully humans are a bad storyline, get old really fast throughout the 3-hour sit. I agree. It got old really fast, and I did see the preach. To me, it was more about corporate greed, but I guess environmentalism with the tree and all that, I could see that too. 3.5 stars. I hope they don't screw up parts 2 to 20 or whatever it's going to be. Okay, that's sarcasm, because, you know, when you look on Rotten Tomatoes, now I haven't verified this. I haven't looked up to see if any of this is concrete. I just see that on Rotten Tomatoes, when you do a search on Avatar, it also brings up in the search box Avatar 3, 4, and 5. And it has the same stars listed, and I didn't click on any of them, and I don't want to. But yeah, if this is any indication, they're going to continue trying to put this crap out. 2.5 stars. Entertaining on first watch, but pretty forgettable. 5 stars. With vibrant and perfect visual effects, gorgeous production design, impeccable cinematography, great performances from Sam Worthington, blah, 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 blah. Avatar is an incredible and brilliant film. I'd say no, and you should work for James Cameron's marketing department on the second one, because you've got a career there. But we're moving on. 4 stars, visually stunning, story is mediocre, that's an understatement. 5 stars, I enjoyed every minute out of it, great CGI and great actors, great script, great music. Okay, again, get a little bit more wordy, get better at the padding, and you may also find yourself working on Avatar 2 in the marketing department. 2 stars, looked amazing, but boring. Boring, yes, boring is worse than being amazing. Boring is the worst thing any movie or story of any type can be. 5 stars, I have found myself unable to rate movies higher than 4.5 since I've seen Avatar. For me, it's the best movie I've come across. Really, I find that hard to believe. I don't believe that's genuine. 5 stars, best movie ever made. 4.5 stars. This movie is my nostalgia. It is nearly a magnum opus. Okay, maybe if you were like 5 or 6 at the time, but good luck recapturing that 6-year-old you. 5 stars. This movie transported me to a different place. I kind of agree. It transported me into a blissful sleep without me realizing what had happened. That's pretty good. 5 stars. I don't care how tired you are. You won't fall asleep on this one. Sam Worthington's best, if you ask me. Really, I disagree. This was Insomnia, or this was The Cure for Insomnia. 5 stars, one of the best movies ever made. 4.5 stars. There is little more to say than the CGI is astounding. A massive feat for the creators. There are various action-packed sequences, including fights with some shocking, realistic creature, but most of all, it has a storyline. There is a proper storyline of humans invading an indigenous planet that is partially a reflection on the colonization of the past. This movie, although essentially action-based, has deep messages of acceptance and fighting for what you believe in. And all this goes without saying that it is, this is like, hey, you're gonna get in the marketing department, you play your cards right, there are sequels. 5 stars. I'm still trying to understand why top critics are allowed to rate this movie 10 years later. With the sequel coming, rating it in at 2018 won't make them more credible. If you weren't rating movies, then just own it. But yeah, the vision and extent Cameron went to is scary. A dude that sets the bar every decade with whatever technology is available to the date. And yeah, he has a script to go with the visuals. No, I disagree. His script to go with the visuals was the script from a 12-year-old. It needed to be a better script. It needed to be something with tension that wouldn't put me to sleep. 5 stars. You know deep down this was the most immersive film ever. No, I disagree. It immersed my eyeballs in fantastic colors. That's about it. 3.5 stars. After nearly 10 years, I finally watched this movie. Yes, the highest grossing movie of all time as of February 15th, 2019, and it took me almost 10 years to watch it. After watching it, I don't feel it really deserves to have that title, nor that it's bad or anything. The movie is gorgeous to look at with some amazing visual effects and an absorbing world. My problem with the movie is that the story was way too familiar and some characters could have been fleshed out a little better. Well, you're being very nice. You're saying what I'm saying. You're being very nice and you're giving it 3.5 stars. Knock that back to 2.5 stars. Then we're in agreement. 3.5 stars. Avatar is the kind of movie everybody should watch, not just because it's a nice movie, because it's now considered as a classic of this last year's. In Avatar, you can get involved in an action movie with futuristic theme, nature, aliens, and love. In that way is a movie where every part of the family can get fun at the cinema. Okay, great, it's a family movie. I think it's a boring family movie. I think that it's disappointing that James Cameron couldn't do better, that he thought his 12-year-old self was capable of the script. It's just sad. 5 stars, epic, beautiful movie. Half a star, not interested in furry porn. Sorry. Sarcasm, but it was almost that bad. Half a star, Dancing with Wolves, again. 3.5 stars. Great graphics. Plot was typical of an action movie. Can't wait to go to Disney World. Again, the Disney ride has caused this thing to outlive its usefulness. Great graphics, sure, maybe for the time. Plot was typical of an action movie. I disagree. The plot was worse than most action movies. I've seen like I mean, you could take the plot of, say, one of Chuck Norris's missing in action movies from the 80s. That's a generic action movie. The plot was better than this. It was less predictable than this. 5 stars, not bogus, good movie. En contraire, bogus and not a great movie. 5 stars, never get tired of watching it. Wow, you're a glutton for punishment. 5 stars, the only way to watch this is in an IMAX Big D 3D theater, a technological marvel. I'm glad I never saw this in IMAX because I would have paid more for the ticket, and I would have really been upset, falling asleep for like $19 or $20. And I'm glad I saw it for free. That's all I can say. 5 stars, one of the best movies I ever watched. I've watched it 37 times. Wow, okay, keep your counter ready. I want to see how many times you can watch it in the next 10 years because you've lost it. 4 stars, when you first watch this movie, it is quite the spectacle, but when it comes to the story of this movie, it is some Frankenstein monster of a flick which uses tropes from Pocahontas, Dances with Wolves, and Fern Gully. That being said, Sam Worthington was a fresh face at the time who played the role well. Yeah, let's talk about Sam Worthington. He has all but disappeared. He had another regrettable role, which I think he performed better in one of the Terminator movies, Terminator Salvation. I don't think he's a bad actor, but for some reason he rubs people the wrong way, and he has faded into obscurity. I don't know what's happened to him. The last time I saw him, he was in some small movie where he was on the edge of a building pretending like he was going to commit suicide. I couldn't get through that. Sam Worthington has faded away, and I wish Avatar would fade away with him. 5 stars, Avatar reaffirms James Cameron's singular gift for imaginative, absorbing filmmaking. No, this was 12-year-old James Cameron's imagination with a lot of budget into CGI. I disagree. 5 stars, imagination is never in short supply. Well, James Cameron's 12-year-old imagination was adequate when he was 12, but it's not adequate now. Half a star, this movie sucked. I don't understand the good reviews. I agree completely. That's why I started to do this rotten review. 5 stars. This movie gets 5 stars for everything it gave, from story to music to characters to new effects at its time, and most important, its colors. Sadly, all movies today now use this technology, so Avatar 2, 3, and 4 are not going to be able to blow us away with effects. Effects don't do this anymore, so the focus must be on story. Well, I disagree. Don't make excuses for the future bombs that are going to be titled Avatar. The effects didn't blow us away then, and they're not blowing us away now. Effects are just cartoons shoehorned into the real world with some shading. If you just keep putting more money into special effects, what do you get? You get a cartoon. We've had cartoons for like 70, 80, 100 years now. People need to get over this fascination with CGI. 2 stars. A company of explorers traveled to a new world in search of a rare and valuable mineral. The natives of this new world are much more in tune with nature than the settlers, so much so that they're able to talk to trees. One of the settlers falls in love with the daughter of the native chief, but she's already betrothed to a strong warrior from her tribe. When said strong warrior gets killed by one of the settlers, it sparks a war between the two races, with the two lovers caught in the middle. Gee, doesn't that sound like a lot of things? This reviewer has made my point. I think that's where he was going. But he was going to take a long time to get there. 2 stars. Obviously, visual effects are amazing. The according was strong, but the overall story was just so unimaginative. No, I'm not talking about the storyboard visuals. Those were amazing. But the narrative, holy crap, talk about ripping off other movies and just copying them into a different environment. Exactly. 1 star, weird. I did not like it. Enough said. I would disagree on the 1 star. It's not that bad. I would also disagree that it was weird enough to turn anybody off. It was certainly not weird at all. It was just boring. If it had been weird or edgy and weird, I might have actually liked it. I wouldn't be doing this rotten review, but no, it was just boring and predictable. 3 stars. This is so overrated. This movie was stretched so goddamn much. This movie was mainly CGI. That's a bad move to have too much CGI in a live-action movie. The plot was so lazy. It was great, but with points quite lazy. So many psychics, anachronisms. The villain should have died too. I swear he is immortal. A freaking plane he is in blows up and manages to jump out in a solid metal mech suit to the ground from 100 feet. The air is supposed to be toxic to humans, yet he was able to breathe it. Okay, so this reviewer is actually, for the first time that I've seen here, pointing out holes in the plot. With, you know, the story continuity and the realism, the rules of the physics of the world, so to speak. And yeah, we could go into that, but I'm just so disgusted by the CGI and everybody's love for it that, you know, to me, the minor points about whether somebody could breathe a few breaths of the alien atmosphere are just like a nitpick now at this point. The CGI and slow pace are enough to put me over the edge. 4 stars. When I watched this some time ago, I was young. There were undoubtedly comparisons with my native movie and the aliens in this story. It really hit home for me and hard. It made me cry back then, and I haven't watched it since, but I will most likely have a similar, less dramatic reaction. The animation was very lovely and really put you in a different world. Yeah, I would agree with him in that when he watches it again, I'm sure it won't give him the same effect because he was just dazzled by colors and CGI. And this is going to become cringe. We're going to be looking at 2029 Avatar: The Cringe Fest. 2.5 stars. On a visual level, it's magnificent and incredible. As a piece of storytelling, it's awful. Acting-wise, it's good, but it's not groundbreaking. I'd say acting-wise, it's passable. The storytelling is boring as hell. The visual level is less magnificent by the day. 5 stars. Great movie, lots of action and special effects were extraordinary. Watched it with my friends in grade 11 English with whoever. We loved it. Oh, I'm sure you did. 11th grade. It didn't take much to impress you. 4.5 stars. Everything is perfect in this movie. 4 stars. Avatar is James Cameron's child in waiting for longer than a decade. 12 years since Titanic, Cameron again delivers with a great science fiction epic. And I'm going to stop there, bringing up Titanic. Personally, I found Titanic boring. Now, that may reveal, you know, the type of person that can't get into Avatar. Maybe they're the same type of person that couldn't get into Titanic. The best parts of Titanic for me were the very beginning, where they were, you know, in the modern times uncovering a mystery, and then towards the end, when the ship actually sank and there was drama and conflict and the plot moved along, the middle of it was completely unneeded and could have been left on the cutting room floor. That's how I feel about Titanic. People have told me it's a woman's movie. That's great. But again, I feel that Titanic was the first movie that James Cameron didn't interest me. All his previous work had interested me. And Avatar just continued my disappointment as I kind of have forgotten about James Cameron. Everything I see his name attached to now is merely he's there as an advisor, or he's there to promote something that his name is attached to, but he has no actual creative role in the story. For example, the newest Terminator movie, Dark Fate, coming out. So I already know how that's going to go. I was particularly impressed with Cameron and The Abyss. The Abyss really, I thought The Abyss it's far superior to Titanic. It's far superior to Avatar. I've seen it many times. I was a young adult when I saw it, and I probably watched it 6 or 7 times, and the concepts behind it are not dated, and the CGI isn't so overused and cartoonish that you cringe today. I would recommend for seeing James Cameron's work, other than Aliens and Terminator 2, I would suggest The Abyss, because I don't hear it brought up a lot, and I think it's deserving of attention. Not this. 5 stars. I regret not seeing this in theater, but after I find this movie using Boxy okay, whatever Boxy is, it's not worth all that. There's a reason why you don't even see Avatar running on cable channels, because it's not all that and it's too long. At least that's my thought. 3.5 stars. So I rewatched James Cameron's Avatar again the other day. This is from November 5th, 2018. I have to say, 9 years removed from my initial love affair with the movie, it doesn't quite hold up as well for me as it did in 2009. From then to around mid-2010, I was obsessed with Avatar. I saw it in theaters 5 times, the only movie I've seen more than once in the theater. I bought the soundtrack. I joined an Avatar forum to discuss the world and the culture. Wow. I even talked to my mother in Navi for a few weeks. But here I am in my late 30s, yeah, and I can guess the rest. Here you are, and as time goes by, you hesitate to even describe this to people in public because it sounds cringe already, and it's going to get worse. Trust me, it's going to get worse. 5 stars, an all-time favorite and masterpiece. Half a star, preachy, sanctimonious, not worth seeing. 5 stars, Avatar captures all realms of the human indulgence. It is the perfect form of hero story, as well as having a positive message about saving the environment. The movie is extremely creative and imagined. We are presented with a new language called the Na'vi, a new goddess named Iwa, who is presumed one with nature, and a new fundamental life forms that engulf your imagination. The idea of the human-controlled avatars is something really. The idea of the human-controlled avatars is unprecedented. If it's unprecedented, then how come when I was first exposed to this 10 minutes into the movie, I already knew how it was going to end? This isn't unprecedented. This is just another angle on a trope that's been done so many times in sci-fi and so many times in thriller sci-fi, I mean going back to even the Twilight Zone, that it's old. It's old, boring, and predictable. 4 stars. An incredibly interesting piece of sci-fi, but the story plays a little weak. Oh, yeah, a little. 5 stars. A cinematic masterpiece. Oh, thank you. 5 stars. Action-packed. Thoughtful with nice acting. The film really deserves to be the highest-grossing movie of all time. Well, whatever. I can just go ahead and say Avengers Endgame trounced it. And no, I don't think Avengers Endgame is all that. It's certainly not the #1 film in the MCU. I would give that to Infinity War. But just knowing that some movie out there, even if it had to cheat a little bit to do it, beat Avatar, is satisfying to me. It really is. 3.5 stars. Spanish, but I'll take your word for it. 4 stars. 12 years since Titanic, Cameron again delivers with a great science fiction epic with the usual tropes and cliches, but somehow making it work. See, I disagree. He delivered it with the usual tropes and cliches, not the usual ones, well-worn ones. And he didn't deliver. All he delivered on was a gigantic, expensive cartoon. And that's where I'm going to leave it because I think I've said everything I can say. The only thing that's going to happen if I continue is I'm going to say it louder and angrier, and maybe I'd start drinking, and it would be funny watching me slur the words while I told you even louder and angrier why I hate this film. Hate's a strong word, but I'd hate to see a sequel. If there are no sequels to Avatar and that gets shelved for like 20 years, I'll be happy. The hate will subside and I'll return to a nice, pleasant, peaceful zen. But if I get further word that Avatar is going to be released as a sequel, yeah, I don't know what's going to happen. I'm going to have to do more rotten reviews. I'm going to go crazy. I don't know what. I will definitely be voting against the sequel, and well, I'll just leave it at that. And hopefully next time we'll have a more peaceful reading of rotten reviews. Until the next time.